Hi everyone, this is Mary. Welcome back to my channel. I didn't know what to make today's video about, so I was thinking for quite some time, and in the end, as you've already guessed, I decided to make a video about the books that were banned in Soviet Union. I think that this topic is very interesting. It's important for me. I think it's important for everyone who studies literature. In general, the topic of banned books, I think, is very important and shows a lot about literature and its development. So let me know if you like this video, and I will make part 2 for books that were banned in Soviet Union. Maybe we could even do books that were banned in the US, because it also has a pretty interesting history of banned books. I would also like to look at Europe, at Latin America. I think there are a lot of possibilities, opportunities, and this could be a whole series of videos. So let me know if you like this one and if you're interested in knowing more. So to begin, I want to kind of set the rules for today's video. I only have 7 books. It doesn't mean that only 7 books were banned in Soviet Union. There were many more. But for today's video, I decided to only take Soviet authors that were banned, and I decided to take the most important books, the most known books, the ones that I think were the most influential. And obviously, again, there were many more. There were authors like George Orwell, there were authors like Ernest Hemingway, and I can tell more about them in part 2, again, if you like this video. So let's begin. The first book I want to start with is We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. This is one of the first representatives of dystopian novels, and it influenced authors like George Orwell, Aldous Huxley, and many more. So this is a dystopian novel that researched totalitarian regime. Obviously, it was banned in Soviet Union because the government thought that it was kind of a direct attack at them, and this novel was secretly brought to Berlin, where it was published in English in 1924. After that, the author started getting so much criticism from the Soviet government, from Soviet writers who did not think that this was an appropriate novel, that at some point Zamyatin had to write a letter to Stalin and ask him to let him leave the country because he can't publish his novels in Soviet Union. The next novel is Heart of a Dog by Mikhail Bulgakov, and this novel was a political satire on revolution and proletariat, and it was written in 1925. This is the year it was finished, but it was not published until 62 years later in 1987. Even though the book didn't go through the censor, Bulgakov continued reading his book at public reading events until one day somebody got offended by what this book said and wrote a letter stating that it has to stop and this book is just completely inappropriate. And not to go far away from Bulgakov, another novel that was banned is Master and Margarita. I've been talking about this novel so much. This is the novel my husband and I are reading now. And the reason why it was banned is because it was considered a crazy and ill fantasy. That is because it talks about devil coming to Moscow, doing all of these different crazy things. And basically this novel laughs at the Soviet government, at Soviets in Moscow, and the government didn't like that. So Bulgakov's widow tried publishing this novel in 1940s. She wrote multiple inquiries, but she got rejected continuously. So the book first came out in 1967, but it was a very shortened version. It was missing about 14,000 words, and a lot of dialogues were cut short. So the first time we saw the novel as we know it today was only in 1973. The next book is Dr. Zhivago by Boris Pasternak. This is probably one of the most known and most sad stories about the books that were banned in Soviet Union. This novel got a Nobel Prize for Literature, and unfortunately after that the author got so much criticism from the Soviet government that he had to decline the prize money and decline, obviously, the status of a person who won a Nobel Prize. For the first time, the novel was published in 1988, but still in parts because the magazine that was publishing it wasn't sure of the reaction, not only of the government, but also of people, the Soviet citizens who were going to read this novel. But the magazine turned out to be completely wrong. People loved the novel and still love it today. The next book that will probably not surprise anybody is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. And this novel was considered a spiritual poison in Soviet Union. To be fair, this novel was not only questionable in Soviet Union. The first time it was published in the US, people did not really like it, they did not understand it, and it only got popular in Paris when it was published in 1955. This is when people started seeing that there is more to this novel than just a spiritual poison and some indecent fantasy of the author. Soviets could still read the book, but it was an illegal copy that they had to read quietly and secretly in their homes. And it was like that until 1989, when the first legal copy was published. The next book is Cancer Ward by Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn. This novel tells about the 13th cancer ward where Solzhenitsyn was undergoing treatment. It depicts the horrible rooms where people were kept, how overcrowded this hospital was. But what's more, it discusses the debates on ideology, it discusses the fight with illness and death. And Solzhenitsyn even got this novel to be published. It was supposed to be published, and the magazine that was publishing it even typed up a couple of the first chapters, but then somebody called or sent a letter and the magazine was told not to publish Solzhenitsyn's work anymore. And this was not the only novel that was not published. None of Solzhenitsyn's novels were allowed to be published. So to kind of overcome this situation, it was being self-published, and it was that way until 1990, when it was first finally legally published. And the last book that we're going to talk about today is a memoir that I actually had to read for my history class in school, and it's called Journey into the Whirlwind by Yevgeny Ginzburg. This is a novel by a woman who was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in exile in 1930s. So in her book, she talks about her life through this period of time. She talks about her arrest. She talks about trial and sentence that she got. She talks about her life and how she had to live it during those 10 years, people she met, conversations she had. And this was the time also when World War II was happening. So some of those years that she was spending in exile were during World War II, and that obviously impacted her life a lot as well. And she walks us through all of this process. She talks about how she learned how to live again. And this book was definitely very hard to read, but it was amazing. This memoir is the one to read, absolutely, and I would definitely recommend it. So these were all the books that we're going to discuss today. Please let me know if you liked this video and if you want part 2. I will also look through other Soviet writers that were banned, as well as foreign writers that were banned in Soviet Union. Please like this video or leave a comment if you enjoyed it, just to let me know. And thank you for staying here with me today. I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.